there is. So that adds an extra element.
Oh, no.
Particularly tomorrow night, I should emphasise it's going to be quite a long tail, a long weekend of Sofology coming up, because there'll be the usual traditional overnight stuff, with people like me and Laura Cooper staying up tonight, getting rather excited as the results come in.
What book are you reading?
Wake up Friday morning, you do not have the full picture. There'll be further results all the way through Friday and indeed all the way through Saturday.
佢咪借咗本書俾人啊？你話尋日要報個 book， 我靚
The
咗 book。
initial headlines may not match the headlines towards the end in terms of what the parties feel about it all. Two things, Mark, I think worth keeping a particular eye on: mayoral contests, and particularly the mayoral contest in the Tees Valley and in the West Midlands. Two seats currently held by the Conservatives, and I think they could prove to be the psychological seesaw, if you like, upon which Conservative sentiment about all of these results tilts.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was talking to a couple of the Conservative former ministers, and they were saying to me that if those two mayor elections are lost, and I quote off the record, then the madness will ensue, i.e. a leadership contest.
This is the thing: if the Conservatives can hold one or both of those, then I think their capacity to shift the mood within the Conservative Party, even if for them the results are pretty bleak elsewhere, could be really, really significant. Because once we get to the middle of the weekend and we've got all of the results, the big question is going to be: how do Conservative MPs collectively react to the results? Because they, in the short term, have this issue of fate in their hands. Do they conclude the results are so dire, so cataclysmic, that collectively they think they have to do something radical, in other words, potentially try and get rid of him? Or is a pretty bleak result already priced in sufficiently that if there are shafts of light and positivity from their perspective here and there, they conclude that that would be not a good idea? So that's, I think, in the psychological sense, how psychology and psephology will intermingle in the middle of the weekend, and determining what consequences there might be for Westminster of what we see around England and Wales.
Well, exciting prospect, a weekend of Sofology. For some of us, maybe not everybody. Thanks very much, Chris.
If you're interested in that intermingling, it will be happening live on the programme on Saturday morning. I will be in Dudley in the West Midlands. I am already excited about it now, even if you're not. Carty is here now, nearly 8:30.
Well, thank you very much, Edward Shine Harder, for the promotion to the Premier League offer a 2-goal win at Coventry City last night. After 4 games, it was a return to form for Ipswich on Saturday against Huddersfield. England captain Harry Kane scored his 43rd goal in 43 games this season. It drew to Royal Madrid. First up on the bench was Lucas Digne at the time, which led to the other side. As Chelsea women's manager Emma Hayes believes her team has a solid chance of retaining their women's Super League title as City wins as Manchester City have faced Liverpool tonight. Queen's beaten 4-1 Liverpool striker Natasha Downey, part of tonight's Five commentary team. Natasha helped the goal with a miraculous possible winning 4-3 for Liverpool this season. Since then, of course, the League Cup final will be looked at in the FA Cup fifth place at the moment. August for that Naraka results in plus in the tennis with Masters has come to 11.82 to Grand Slam champion yesterday before that. Excellent was his final competitive appearance in Spain. And Jofra Archer has been recalled to the England cricket squad in their defence of the T20 Men's World Cup in the Caribbean and the United States in June. Archer hasn't played for England for over a year due to a long-standing elbow injury. Racing tips both from Ascot this morning, 2:15, number 5 at Sweet William, 3:25 and number 6 Bullhampton.
Thanks very much indeed, Carthy. Now here's Sean Williams with a word about this morning's Life Changing. Good morning. Today on Life Changing, a young boy excluded and a young life radically altered. But Thierry Blundell made a decision not to let other people's judgment define him. The extraordinary story of a moment that transformed everything and set him on a different path altogether. Do join us after the news at 9.
To the weather, it's going to be misty and foggy in the east. It'll be slow to clear. Once it does, there's sunshine and showers and then thunder in the south later.
You're listening to Today on BBC Radio 4 with Justin Webb and Martha Carney. It's 26 minutes to 9. Here's a summary of the news from Vicky Ellis.
The father of a 7-year-old girl who died while trying to cross the channel last week has told BBC News how he tried to save her from a crash on the board. The girl was one of 5 people who died as the intellectual craft left France. A failed asylum seeker has become the first to be sent voluntarily from the UK to Rwanda. He was given £3,000 and flown out on a commercial flight unless he had separate from ministers' deportation plans. The government said that he will allow people with no immigration status in the UK to be relocated to a safe third country where they will be supported to rebuild their lives. Hundreds of police officers have raided Columbia University in New York to remove pro-Palestinian demonstrators who take over the building and used to be. Dozens of people have been arrested. The government is setting out plans to allow every academy school in England to admit all their pupils on the basis of religion. Ministers are considering whether to scrap the 50% limit currently in place.
Thanks very much, Vicky. The time now is 25 minutes to 9. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that their forces will enter Gaza's southern city of Rafah regardless of whether a ceasefire is reached with Hamas or not. The announcement comes as Israeli concerns grow about possible action being taken by the International Criminal Court in The Hague. It's possible that this week there will be arrest warrants issued by the ICC for Israeli politicians. Well, we're joined now by Sir Geoffrey Nice, a barrister who led the prosecution of Slobodan Milosevic for war crimes. Good morning.
Good morning.
How will the ICC go about gathering evidence?
First of all, it'll gather evidence of what may be shown to be a crime simply by what you find on the ground. The level of destruction, the number of people killed, and in respect of the recent mass grave found, how the bodies were found, whether they showed that they were killed by way of what must be a crime. You then need to trace the chain of command up from there as far as it goes. Now, you might think that's going to be difficult. It's probably not as difficult as one might think. Developed military forces like the IDF have highly sophisticated chains of command, very detailed records, and it is possible to infer, with or without direct evidence, a unit acting in the way that may have acted with respect to the crime committed. There will be an effective command top-down, so in addition to, for example, eyewitness evidence, it may have committed
我估你40分先可以入到去課室裏邊，係咪 late 咁就？
And if the leadership doesn't disavow the action or show what happened, that way
What happened if you're late?
responsibility of the leadership itself,
Huh?
political and
Nothing happened.
That's interesting. And what about
What?
the evidence you talked about initially, which is from on the ground, eyewitness testimony, and how is that possibly verified?
doesn't need to be verified. I mean, it's not just business of assuming that if a witness says something, it has to be verified. If somebody tells me that they've seen their family wiped out by gunfire, why should I accept it? Single witness is fine, video evidence provided on camera is fine, provided it's properly explained the source. So ground level evidence is authentic, and there's no real reason to doubt what you show or spoken.
Is there video of trying to check in with other eyewitnesses in the same place,
So missed what,
or
Matt?
looking more forensically at level?
I think, I'm quite sure that the prosecutor of the ICC will have done all possible verification, what used to be called corroboration. I'm right. Trials are procedural events where any technical defense would be used. But let me go back to what I said at the beginning. It's a massive evidence, and if live evidence given by people present at the time, or taken as videos on their phones or other devices, no real reason to doubt what they say, and it should probably and will be accepted to court.
Do you think it will reach the stage where the International Criminal Court will issue arrest warrants for these?
So if they see a trial coming along, or an investigation coming along, or possibly cause them some great reputational damage, if they recommend to interfere with the trial or the investigation or trial process so as to safeguard that reputational damage, then they'll do that because they're acting in the interest of their country. And so what lawyers and politicians have to do is keep as strong and high as possible on everything they hear about the process, actually to ensure, satisfy themselves whether there has been.
Sir Geoffrey Nice, Casey, thank you.
30 minutes to 9 is the time. Russia is showing off Western arms captured in Ukraine. The president of Russia is able to see this demonstration of what the Russians say is Russian power and success in Ukraine. Steve, set the scene.
Yeah, I'm in Victory Park, Justin, which is a giant memorial complex dedicated to the defeat of Nazi Germany. But what I see in front of me has nothing at all to do with World War II, and everything to do with Russia's war now in Ukraine. So lined up here is Western military hardware that Russia has captured in Ukraine. There are tanks, armoured cars from, for example, Germany, from America, from Britain, just seen a British Husky tactical support vehicle with its windscreen shot up, posing photographs by it. So today the Russian military has put these war trophies from the West on display and is letting the Russian public take a look. And because it's a day off in Russia, it's a bank holiday, and the weather is very good, very sunny, the place is absolutely packed. There are so many people here, taking photographs with their children by Western military hardware.
Is there a real sense in Russia, more wide, that might be played into by this, that actually things in Ukraine have turned in their favour?
I think so. I mean, there is an element of gloating here, right? I mean, the Russians are increasingly confident, and that their message, one of their messages, is written on a sign beside all these war trophies, and it reads, "Our victory is inevitable." They're clearly feeling more confident. But yeah, I think the first thing to say is that the Russians are not inventing the wheel here, right? Ukraine has also put on public display Russian military hardware that it has captured. But as far as the Russian authorities go, I think with this display we're seeing today, there are several key objectives. Like the first one is to reinforce the Kremlin's narrative that in Ukraine, NATO and the West in general are waging war on Russia. In other words, it is to demonize the West even more in the minds of Russians. Because in reality, Russia invaded Ukraine. It was President Putin's decision to start this whole special military operation in Ukraine. And, with arms and ammunition, the West has come to its defense. But also, there is this historical symbolism. This is a World War II memorial park. And all around it is red flags commemorating the upcoming Victory Day, May the 9th holiday that marks Hitler's defeat. And I think the venue for this exhibition, a World War II memorial, and the timing ahead of Victory Day, this serves another Russian narrative, claiming that, well, Ukraine is just like World War II. Russia was invaded by Nazi Germany, and Russia was defending itself again through the Soviet Russian air. We have to remind ourselves that in 2022, the Russian army launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. World War II and Ukraine did not the same thing. Steve Rosenberg, Russia.
Time now 16 minutes to 9.
report contains some distressing details.
Emergency response doctor Rich Wayne Hobson was the first medic to reach Mikey.
I mean, sort of like this, very pale, with the Mikey's unconscious, very unwell.
Mikey was stabbed in the neck with a zombie knife. A confrontation erupted with a group of teenagers from Wiltshire.
Then when other ambulance teams arrived, they were able to get more eyes to the look down. So the scene that expects to travel right up picking his hair out here behind the scene. Like, definitely one of the worst he's seen in this situation. It's over anything else could change, anything from that to that point. That's the point where the doctor says,
So this is Mikey's bedroom.
11 months on, Mikey's mom, Hayley Ryle, is still struggling to accept that he won't be coming home.
doesn't work.
Exactly the same. Yeah, handcuffed.
It's like a typical teenager's bedroom. School tie on the banisters, gel on the side, kind of linked. What are the things that really mean something to you?
We're always in the dressing gown. Here, stood in that. So, yeah, that from there, I haven't picked it up because I did. I really want to start to go away from there. The bag. They know. I think one of the state, and there's the banister, washing, and the washing basket. Over there. So we're making curry today. This is a chicken salad. We just gather here in Keith's kitchen and provide food for all of my family. That's something, we're helpless in many ways, but it's just something to do for us.
Mikey's family is being supported by a network of friends who are also feeling the impact of his killing.
We now worry even more about our children. Like, petrified to let them out the front door. We needed to do the work. So at night and mornings we say, nothing like last night, worrying that someone happened to ours, when they're just with their friend having a good time safe, but we know now, that's not always the case. We're petrified.
And you can't measure the level of impact it's had. It's absolutely immeasurable.
You feel guilty all the time.
You say guilty, you mean because
Because I still got my
she's
children.
lost her son and you've got
Yeah.
They've got maniac, my children's one. And I've got four, and I can't think about losing one of them four, so how could she ever get over losing her only one? You just can't help but feel guilty because you love them so much.
3 16-year-olds have been convicted of murder or manslaughter. They claim to have stabbed Mikey in self-defence, but they refused to give evidence. They'll be sentenced at the end of this week. Detective Inspector Mark Newbury led the investigation for Avon and Somerset Police.
there is a very small minority who think they need to carry weapons. And the majority of that very small minority, they think they are safer if they carry a weapon. But unfortunately, in my job, in the murder team, most people who carry weapons law into a situation where they think if they then draw their weapon out and show it off, it will protect them. It won't. It just fucks the ante.
The reverberations of this crime are far-reaching and long-lasting. Listen to the mark made on Inspector Will Stevens.
I felt that what our responsibility nothing we wanted to. And funny, isn't it, how it comes up when you start thinking about it? I thought it was all buried away, but clearly it isn't. I was father at that point. Well, I am really. And I just remember, drawing parallels really and thinking how desperate it would be if my little boy ended up in that situation.
Quite a lot of people. I mean, the census tells us that there are close to 6 million, and other work that we've done suggests there could be no 10 million. Why have we got that discrepancy? It's because people don't identify themselves as unpaid parents. They see themselves primarily as wives and partners, husbands, sons, daughters, good nieces and nephews, all very close friends. And so, when we start to use a wide definition, then or wider explanation, again, when people say that they provide care, we've got a significant number of people providing very substantial amounts of care, about 1.5 million across England and Wales, providing over 50 hours a year. Well, before we go any further, let's hear from Cara. Let's hear from Laura. She's in her 30s and she looks after a 19-year-old when her mother is pregnant. She does all that alongside a demanding full-time job, and Laura made us an audio diary on her extremely busy week.
Hi, Cara, was that good? Lovely. Did you enjoy that? Oh, well, thank you for everything. I'll take it out.
Now, what did you have?
I haven't had time yet. I need to make my food. I haven't had time. Oh, I will. I'll just do this. I'm Laura. I'm 36. I'm a comms professional, and I'm also an unpaid carer. Completely by accident. I was living in London, being a normal 33-year-old in London, trying to make things happen myself, and then that all got cut short when I was asked to go and help my grandma. So what I thought was a 2-week trip turned into 4 years and counting. I didn't really know I was an unpaid carer until about 2 years ago when I discovered the Carers UK website actually, and I found out that I actually have a title and that I'm not just my grandma's butler and cook and cleaner, etc. Right, so let's start your exercises then. Right, up we go, do a little walking. One. I pay for all the bills. Grandma couldn't afford all those things on her stage. So we have 2.5 hours of help a week. It costs about £300 a month. We've cut back on some things and we've definitely, put the heating down. But I can't put it down to as low as I would like because Grandma's 99 and she's always cold. Ta-da! Fine! Well done. Excellent. Right. I will, I've just got a few more emails to do and I'll come down and I'll do dinner, yes? Yes. Okay. So I'll put the snooker on. I'm exhausted. As a carer, you don't really have weekends, you just leave the same day repeat. No matter what day it is. I just do slightly fewer work emails at the weekend for a big week at work this coming week, and I just hate the feeling of just being tired, and I wish I could have just done something for me just once, even if that's watching a movie, not have a nap. Stop it. It's not that terrible.
But not that one either.
He's doing. No, get brush your teeth and I put toothbrush on your toothbrush. Morning everybody, it's unspeakably early at Manchester Piccadilly train station. I have to travel for work. I've been up since 3, prepping breakfast and pills for Grandma and then doing her lunch so that she can eat while I'm away. I will rush back on the first available train as well to be back later on this afternoon. Anyway, pray for me that the trains run on time and I'm going to go home to have some coffee. The other thing I worry about, I guess, as an unpaid carer is my future employability. I'm remote now and I worry that, you know, when I do want to find another job or when I have to find another job, that obligation that I have and that responsibility that I have will hinder my chances. I mean, I'm relatively young and I refuse to give my job up because it's the only thing that's left of my life and it's the only thing that's left of me. And you know, I needed to pay for Grandma's care and I needed to live, and I really worry that in the future, if anything were to happen, I really worry about my ability to earn what would be needed to, you know, look after us both. Right, Lily, take your socks off. Lift. Off. Well, let's just not so and then second. In on your very high bed. Oh. Are you right?
Yep.
Night night.
Night night. Big sleep.
Big sleep.
See you in the morning.
See you in the morning.
Huge thanks to Laura for taking the time to record that for us and thanks to her grandmother. So Laura blogs about her experiences and the blog's called Number 18 in the Corner if you wanted to look that up. Emily, it's like you were saying, Laura didn't realise she was an unpaid carer. If someone's listening to this and they do recognise that they are as well, does that actually change anything for them?
Yes, it can do. People feel so they feel very alone, and people often say, "Oh my goodness, I'm so surprised. I'm not the only one feeling like this." So it does help, and it helps once you know that. What can I then do to tackle some of the things that might make my life easier? We talked about the difficulty of looking after yourself. If that's sort of talking to somebody else about the similar issues and that makes you feel more connected, see if you can find some time to do that. You know, we've got an online carers forum, you can do that, or lots of local carers organisations like this.
Caroline, Laura has a lovely relationship with her grandma. You could really hear the love between them, but caring can have a personal and also a financial side.
Absolutely. I mean, partly because people often find that they do have to stop work. And, you know, for someone, for example, like Laura, who's in the prime of life and she's got lots and lots of years ahead of her. So if you interrupt your employment, then obviously that can have a big impact on the rest of your life. And, you know, I think Laura's right to worry a bit about her employability. And it's also just the emotional toll that you can hear how intense the experience is for her, how busy she is, how all-consuming it is. And so, you know, that has an impact too on the rest of your life and what else you want to do. It takes a bit of time to recover from a caring experience as well and then have to rebuild your life. So it's a disruptor, and of course it can bring lots of joy and pleasure as well. But it's a big deal. It's a huge impact on someone's life and financially too.
Absolutely. Emily, then, what financial support is available to carers, and is any of it available to someone like Laura who works?
So there is some financial support available, and the first bit of advice I would give anybody out there is go and look. So if you're not entitled now, you might know in the future if you may need to make decisions. So there's carers allowance, for example, it's the main carers benefit. If you have to be caring for a minimum of 35 hours care a week, so somebody might say, well, that's a full working week anyway. Carers would agree with you on that. But you have to be earning less than £151 per week after deductions, and the person you're caring for has to be on like disability benefit. So you can see someone like Laura might not be entitled to that kind of support, but there might be other kinds of support that you're entitled to.
好似有個人係有圖媽咪，啱啱先過嚟。 頭先我見到好似有個係你個同學嘅媽咪，
earlier.
啱啱先經過去
I
學
mean,
校。
there's loads there. You can cover so many topics.
有冇
One
頭
thing
先有冇
that
人
struck
等
me
媽咪
is
接佢啊？
and she's suffering. She can't get carers allowance as a student.
啊，係咪你嘅學校嗰度有啲人係可以？你學校嗰度係咪有啲人係可以自己走出去跟住等人接？嚇？ 哥哥，你今日有 musical theatre？ 你今日有 musical theatre？
Absolutely. I've been a carer too, and I know how hard it is, and it's very lucky to find those supports. But I think still it changed my life, and I think it made me realise what actually I like, and I don't have a name to do those sorts of things. But I think that's not fair. And then don't look at it. So I think to your program about Director of Policy and Public Affairs, Carers UK, and Caroline Abraham, the Charity Director at AIM. This programme will be available on BBC Sounds in just a couple of hours, and although it's good back with Mobox at midday on Saturday, we'll be hearing about a couple whose current house is frozen because they have the right ID. Real computer says no stuff, don't miss that. If you want to contact him, or the team here, please do email us. It's moneybox@bbc.co.uk, and if you could include a phone number, that will really help. Until next time, have a very good afternoon.
Today's program was presented by Felicity Hannah and produced by Sarah Riley. We're tracking down another online trouble in London.
It's one of Hollywood's greatest films, starring two of Town's biggest names.
But talking about it could be a bit of a problem.
what is so universal and agreed to completely great. And the crime, as you say, is just awful.
I'm Elodie Jones,
And I'm Mark Kirby.
and we're taking a deep dive into Chinatown.
But how do we approach a film in light of what you know about its director?
I can look at the film. This is watch the film as a film, not the history of anything that went on before.
Exploring the genesis, production, and controversy of an iconic movie. Screenshot continues on Radio 4 and BBC 7.
On Friday evening at 7:15.
Some great reports on the final episode.
Towards Eddie Luco. Eddie Luco towards the penalty area. Heading the equaliser. Eddie Luco with England's first attack of the game.
Ennio Luco is a decorated former footballer who scored 33 goals for England. Having spent so many years of her life watching and playing football, she's now also a successful pundit. Back in January, she gave analysis on a Met FA Cup match.
The show went fine, there was no issues whatsoever. The next morning I got called from the producer IT saying, "Is it okay?" I said, "What do you mean I'm fine?" He said, "Because we lot of stuff on social media about last night." I said, "What do you mean? What happened?" And he said, Joey Barton's been spouting off about you and Lucy, and he said something that we think is just horrific.
After the show, Joey Barton, also a former footballer, has begun posting on X, including comparing her and other female pundits, Lucy Ward, to serial killers unleashed a wave of hate other social media users.
Joey Barton speaks to everything in this. No one wants to know what people say.
It was emboldened by the posts and began sending abusive messages.
Now that publishing comments on there. Well, we are trying to tap and check. You know, he's just looking for targets, but she's going to give them a little bit of window or a little bit of bait into someone. You know, to respond.
All these people saying the most wicked things about you, and actually it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm going to say something even worse. It was like a competition of how bad it can get. BBC's disinformation and social media correspondent. And in this series, Radio 4's White Behaviour, I'm investigating extraordinary cases of online hate. I get unwanted messages. Many of the people raise the alarm about content that could cause harm to others. My inbox was inundated with messages about the vitriol being directed at Emily Luco. So in this episode, I'm entering the world as a troll.
European social at night, she's growing activity of the Vikings, and it's right over on my second and right.
As well as the troll. Online views from somebody who is willing to follow us feels like the world is leaving investigating misogynistic and racist hate on social media. Before hearing about the impact these messages have had, I want to first get to know Emily and learn more about her football journey. Football for me is my early family. I've been obsessed with football since the age of 4. I grew up in Birmingham, my local estate, playing football. When she was growing up, Emmy gave the boys in her area a run for their money.
It was my quickest way of sort of being one of the cool kids on the estate. I happened to be the only girl, and I was surrounded by boys. And I realised that I was probably better than all the boys. And they used to tell me actually that I was better than them. So that was early on. Football was such a positive influence in my life. Gave me confidence, made me feel like I belonged to something. And for me, I couldn't really aspire to be a professional footballer because I couldn't see it. It wasn't on TV. And then the closest role models really that I had were the Willis sisters. So I played for fun. I played in my school team. I played in a local team.
Some of the boys she played with locally went on to train with professional clubs. But recognising there weren't many similar opportunities for girls, Emmy decided to pursue other interests and went on to study law.
Whilst at university, that's when women's football started to really start growing. 2012 Olympics really was the sort of watermark change where women's football opened the Olympics, and the perception of the women's game I think changed, and that's when the professionalisation started.
She eventually played for Chelsea.
The home side was still recovering from that setback when the advantage was doubled. A swift Chelsea counter-attack sent Emmy a loose clear, and the England striker clinically found the bottom corner.
And then in before retiring in 2020.
I felt like I was on the cusp
You
of like
knew
a
what?
generational change where
What
I
do you
didn't
know?
really aspire in that way.
You know
but
nothing.
Now I'm seeing the next generation be able to do that.
That's
so
too
that
bad.
always makes me really happy.
Her law training meant she gravitated towards public speaking.
I found myself leaning into becoming a bit of a spokesperson for the team, just on different issues. And then gradually I got the opportunity to go on match of the day too in 2014, so 10 years ago now.
Chelsea's Emmy Luca. We want you to get involved as well.
I think it depends on club philosophy as well. I mean, you know, I watched the Liverpool-Everton game yesterday. John Stones, I remember being quite scared actually of the opportunity, but I also knew that if I was to do it well, all of a sudden people go, oh, girls know how to talk about football, girls understand football, so there was a big opportunity there. Just like football, you know, if you perform on the pitch, the manager and the coach is going to kick you again.
Fast forward 10 years, and Emmy has an established broadcasting career. But her success is accompanied by this parallel world of online abuse. The day after Joey Barton began his attack, he says it was hard to avoid the conversation echoing across the internet.
Now, I'm off Twitter X
I have been for a long time, so I didn't see any of it. But then you only had to Google me, and then everything was being written about by the mainstream press. So then I started to get quite anxious because you get that sort of feeling of being in a fishbowl, that everybody is sort of thinking and talking about you and reading the horrific stuff that's been said about you. And I just didn't get it. I mean, live TV is live TV. Lots of things can go wrong. We all thought it was a good show. So to see such a horrific statement being said just didn't make sense.
Daniel Andrew was on his way to school when he was attacked in Haydock just before 7 o'clock yesterday morning. In a letter to parents, his school's head teacher described him as a positive and gentle boy and said his death was heartbreaking. This is the second time in less than a year the school, Bancrofts, has been hit by tragedy. One of its former pupils, Grace O'Malley Kumar, died in a landslide last year in Nottingham, where she was at university. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, has praised the officers who intervened in yesterday's attack. He said one female officer had suffered serious injuries to her arm. Sir Mark described the extraordinary bravery of police who used tasers to subdue and arrest their suspect. The 36-year-old man is in custody.
The Home Office says it has detained the first migrants identified for deportation to Rwanda. Officials said a series of operations have taken place across the country. More due to be carried out in the coming weeks. Amnesty International has accused the government of whipping up a pre-trial anti-asylum atmosphere. Scotland's outgoing First Minister Humza Yousaf has said ending the SNP's power-sharing agreement with the Scottish Greens was the right thing to do. It was on him that it prevented him losing his job. Mr Yousaf was speaking to the BBC in his first interview since he announced his resignation on Monday. This afternoon, the Scottish government survived a vote of no confidence.
Next Monday 你唔使返學㗎。Next Monday.
This time last week,
Is it? It's bank holiday next Monday. Is it? That's your holiday as well.
Ended that agreement, a move which ultimately led to him announcing his resignation as First Minister. Mr Yousaf said he believed the Bhutanese agreement was going to come to an end anyway in a matter of days or weeks, but that he accepted the manner in which it ended really caused upset, and he paid the price for that. Mr Yousaf said he would not endorse either of the potential SNP leadership candidates, John Swinney or Kate Forbes.
4 female BBC presenters have begun legal action against the corporation over claims of age and sex discrimination and pay equality. Martine Thompson, Karin Giannoni, Kasia Madeira and Anita McVeigh allege that they lost their jobs in a relaunch of the BBC News channel because the application process was rigged. The BBC insists the process was rigorous and fair. Chris?
New York City, last month. Protesters shout, shame on you, as police largely raise break-up protest camps back to 2 universities.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
Did we shout anything? I just shouted anything. You know what, I'm going to be, next Saturday, if there's a protest, I'm going to be prepared to go. Okay?
What were you saying?
Protesters at the moment have used capital on campus to take
你聽日剪頭髮？
their actions.
你聽日要剪頭髮， 我咪 book 咗啊！
Now, the last few hours, the mayor of New York City, Eric, has spoken at a press conference.
I'm late. 5:05.
That speaks to their work.
West of Columbia University, we went in and conducted an operation to allow Columbia University to move those who have turned peaceful protests into a place for anti-Semitism and anti-Israel attitudes for racism. You were at City College and you saw bottles, garbage cans, the other items that were thrown at police officers. Those police officers showed a great level of discipline to not allow this to evolve to an out-of-control situation.
Now, the mayor, Democrat mayor, also suggested that events in his city are centered around a wider international.
Globally, there is a movement to radicalize young people, and I'm not going to wait until it's done and all of a sudden acknowledge the existence of it. This is a global problem. that young people are being influenced by those who are professionals at radicalizing our children. And I'm not going to allow that to happen as the mayor of the city of New York.
But as I say, calling the police in, which the college did, was controversial, even among some faculty.
Instead of saying pro
Reinhold Mast,
Israeli,
architecture,
what if we just say pro
criticised the
ceasefire?
administration.
Okay.
I mean, that's
This is an
peaceful, right?
absolutely shameful
Everyone just wants ceasefire.
University
Nobody's
administration
getting
under
hurt.
pressure,
Like,
political pressure from the far
ceasefire
right, calls on the
in
New York City Police Department heavily
ceasefire
armed to
in
arrest a group
Gaza.
of
Calm
unarmed.
down.
Okay.
That was all New York.
You're more vulture, darling.
West Coast at UCLA last night, University of California, Los Angeles, a group descended on a protest camp on the campus there, and there were scuffles. They tried to dismantle the barriers erected by the pro-Palestinians.
Hey, chill.
Yo, bro, chill.
Well, protesters set off fireworks, the sound of banging sending people nearby.
Yo, chill, bro. Chill.
Well, just in the last hour, a group of Republican senators gave a press conference in Washington, D.C., condemning the protest. This is with John Cornyn, who represents Texas.
Since October the 7th, the line between protesting and rioting has been crossed time and time again on college campuses across the country. Places like Columbia and Yale, some of the most elite, privileged institutions in America, pro-Hamas rioters have taken over buildings, threatened Jewish students, and prevented students from pursuing the very reason they're there, which is their education.
Well, a lot of drama really on the east and west coast, and there have been police on other campuses elsewhere in recent weeks. Let's get an update as to what is going on right now with Normia Orban, our correspondent in New York. Normia, it's a little earlier in the day in New York than it is here, but this morning after the drama last night, what is the mood? Okay, we haven't got Nomi. We'll talk. In the meantime, let us hear the view of one student, Shabos Castellano, who is a graduate student at Harvard University, not one of those we've been talking about today. I spoke to him just before we came on here about his experience as a Jewish student on a campus where there are protests.
We need to call out what is happening, and that is total anarchy at Harvard University. The rules do not apply. Enforcement is non-existent. Students feel emboldened to chant slogans that are in unison and in support of Hamas. Things like globalize the Intifada, free Palestine from the river to the sea, Palestine will be Arab. I have had numerous phone calls and meetings with current Jewish students and admitted Jewish students, and I have told them in no uncertain terms to avoid Harvard University, to avoid this campus, because there is no leadership, there is no one looking out for the interests and the safety of Jewish students. And in my personal capacity, I'm a visibly Orthodox Jew. I wear my yarmulke, my skull cap, I observe the Sabbath, I eat kosher. I know I'm a target. There has already been physical violence on this campus. It's not safe to be a Jew at Harvard University in 2024.
What form is the protest camp? Is it disrupting your education? Is it blocking you getting to a library or getting to a class?
So, number one, Harvard just yesterday announced that they are changing the location of more than a dozen final exams in order so that those exams are not disrupted by the loud protesters right outside. So students, Jewish and non-Jewish alike, are already having diminished educational opportunities. They are already being told that rather than holding these protesters accountable, rather than disciplining them, instead all other students are going to suffer and they have to take their final exams somewhere else. As it pertains to me, I work at Widener Library, which is in the center of Harvard Yard. It's the heart and soul of Harvard University, and I'm incredibly intimidated every single day that I walk into my place of work and my place of study, that I see fellow classmates, in some cases fellow professors, chanting globalized Intifada, illegally occupying a university property. It's incredibly scary. It's incredibly intimidating, and we are not going to wait for there to be another instance of physical violence. We are not going to wait for there to be another incident where a Jewish student can't be
佢
safe.
睇咗做咩事啊？
We need to deal with this
都
immediately.
有個
And
ambulance
Alan
嗰度。
Garber, who's the president of the university, has been completely MIA. He has not answered any of the Jewish students' questions. Where are you? What are you going to do to combat this? What are you going to do to discipline these students? There is a total absence of any sort of leadership.
What would you do if you're a university authority when you have a lot of students who do feel very strong with views totally opposed to yours? A lot of them get
有啲
carried
人
away
喺
and say
喺個
stupid things.
嗰個 ambulance 嗰啲
Really
人喺個巴士
inappropriate
上。
things. But you
個巴
might
士
be
嗰度有
worrying,
有
I'm
有
going to escalate this or make a terrible violent scene if we try to shut it down. You just have to let these things play out.
We are not going to be intimidated by terrorist thugs and terrorist sympathizers. We are not the ones who are escalating. We are not the ones calling for violence. We are Jewish students who just want to go to class, sit, and learn. That is all we are asking.
Can I just ask you, Shabbat, many of the demonstrators, when it is put to them that they are anti-Semitic or there are anti-Semitic elements among them, say we have many Jewish people on the demonstrations with us. Have you spoken to any of the Jewish supporters of the Palestinian cause, the ones who might be fellow Jewish students who are actually with the demonstrators?
Of course. I know exactly who they are. I sit in classrooms with them. These are the same Jewish students who held their Passover Seder
嗰個
on the
ceasefire
wrong day,
之類嗰啲
who
咧，
totally
即係
neglected and
protest
forgot
嗰
all
啲咧，通常
mention
都係
of the word
left wing
Jerusalem
嗰啲啊。
during the Passover Seder. So these
記
are
唔記得
Jews who
爸爸講過 left
unfortunately
wing right
pray
wing
for them,
left wing 就係
sympathize for them, but these are
world
Jews who
peace
unfortunately
everyone is
have
equal 嗰
totally
啲
taken off
嗰
any
啲就
semblance
left
of
wing
Jewish identity, any
right
sort of
right wing 就係
connection,
this is
to
my
Jewish
country
values.
you can't come here
But they do not speak for the community, they are not large in numbers, and they don't have localization, organization, or basic historical or religious knowledge. And it's a shame.
Well, that is Harvard graduate Shabbat Kester, very angry at the protest. Very angry that not more action to be taken to his university to shut those down. Let us talk now to Nomi Iqbal, our correspondent, who is outside the gates of Columbia University in New York. Morning after the night before, Nomi, all quiet there now?
Okay.
It is very quiet. Well, as quiet as New York City can be, but it's certainly a huge contrast from last night where our team was pretty much in the thick of it. It felt like there was a coordinated raid by the NYPD. We were at City College University where the riot police were out with white zip ties. There was a confrontation by local people, students with the police. We couldn't get anywhere near the encampment, which is only a 2-minute walk behind the barriers. I'd actually been to the encampment over the weekend. It was pretty full, pretty quiet, pretty calm. And then about half an hour away, we came to Columbia University, where it really had kicked off. Police were just everywhere. They had blocked off the campus before. You had huge crowds of pro-Palestinian supporters shouting shame, shame, shame at the police. You saw them arresting people. They had their hands tied behind their backs and being loaded onto NYPD buses. And today we've got sort of more of an estimate of just how many people have been arrested. It's nearly 300 have been arrested. And in terms of the students, more than 100 have been suspended from Columbia University.
Oh no.
Is there any kind of protest left now, Nomi? I'm rather assuming they've all been cleared, but I could easily imagine that some who haven't been arrested might come back and put a tent up in the campus. I mean, is that happening?
It's a really good question. We did see one other smaller college. There was a some sort of encampment that was set up inside, but I think it was pretty small. Most of the students are, pretty. They are kind of not talking to the press at the moment. I think a lot of that is out of fear of, what reprisals could be from the university. I did speak to a student journalist just a moment ago who works at Columbia University, and I asked him that very question: are the protests over? And he said, not. They're not. In terms of what format they take is another thing. It's worth mentioning that the sorts of protests.
我 last week 係肺病唔舒服，所以你去唔到。Musical theatre。
University ties to
Last week 係哥哥肺病唔舒服啊嘛，係咪？
That particular movement has been going on for years.
所以你就去唔到呢個
even
musical
before
theatre。
But I think if you mean in terms of these sort of big encampments, these big protests,
如果佢
they've all
問
been
嘅話，就
dismissed
話
for the
細條啲唔
moment.
舒服，入
I'd
到
be very
喺
surprised if they
要
spring
喺
up
醫院
again.
嗰個瞓啱啊。
Lamia, thank you for that. It's a cultural moment in the US. It's spread globally to some extent, not quite as intensely, from the US. And later in the program, we'll hear from someone, Eva Patterson, who was a player in the 1968 student protests that were also a very, very big cultural moment in the US. But it's 18 minutes past 5 now, and we'll have some other headlines from today. Here's Chris.
Israel has reopened the Erez crossing into Gaza, allowing more aid into the territory. Police in Istanbul have fired tear gas and rubber bullets in an effort to stop people holding a
你有帶
May Day
手杖
rally.
㗎嘛？係咪嗰個？
One of the UK's largest mortgage lenders nationwide says house prices have fallen for the second month in a
你
row.
知道點啊？你問喺邊度上堂啊？哥哥？
14-year-old boy killed yesterday in Hayden
Bye-bye.
has been named as Daniel Anjorin. He was a pupil at Bancroft School at Woodford Green in East London. His mother is a teacher at a different school. This afternoon, Metropolitan Police called it an incredibly tragic incident which had left the young boy dead and the family devastated. We can talk to Ben Wilson, who's at Bancroft School at Woodford Green in East London. And Ben, first of all, have we learned more about the events of yesterday today?
Good afternoon, Evan. We have heard several statements from the Metropolitan Police in which we have learned a little more about the severity of the injuries suffered by the two officers who were injured as they attended the attacks yesterday. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Mark Rowley, has praised the officers who intervened in the sword attack, describing their extraordinary bravery as they tackled the man wielding the weapon with their tasers. Two officers, we're told, are in hospital, with one female officer suffering from what the Commissioner described as horrifically serious injuries to her arm.
Yeah, and we've had a statement from the school on Daniel and the tragedy of Daniel losing his life.
Yes, indeed. This afternoon we've watched as parents and pupils have been bringing floral tributes here to this private school in northeast London, and we understand that special assemblies have been held at the school today as the staff try to support the pupils here at this very difficult time. That statement that you mentioned says the school is devastated by the heartbreaking news of the death of Daniel Anjorin, who attended our school. This has left us in profound shock and sorrow. Daniel joined Bancrofts at 7 years old and quickly became a core member of our community. He was a true scholar, demonstrating commendable dedication to his academic pursuits. His positive nature and gentle character will leave a lasting impact on us, the statement says. It goes on, losing such a young pupil is something we will always struggle to come to terms with. We are now doing all we can to support our entire community through this most painful situation. Our thoughts and deepest sympathies are with Daniel's family during this incredibly difficult time. And Evan, we understand a book of condolences has been opened at the school chapel here for pupils to offer their reflections on the life of Daniel Anjorin, described by the head teacher here as a much-loved pupil.
Ben, thank you for that. Ben. The director of the Victorian Albert Museum, the V&A, is in Ghana. He's there because his museum, along with the British Museum, is lending numerous items of gold and silver regalia to a museum in Ghana, from which the items came. They'll be displayed at the Palace Museum in Kumasi later this year, as part of a long-term loan commitment. Many of these items will be seen in Ghana for the first time in 150 years. The director of the V&A is Tristram Hunt. He spoke to me from just outside his other museum earlier.
I'm standing beneath one of the greatest banyan trees I've ever seen. It's vast, heaving and huge. In the palace of the Santahini in Kumasi, where the Mancha Palace Museum is situated, where the items are on display. It's the silver jubilee of Alfonso Tutu II, who is the Santahini, the king of the Santahini. But it's also the 150th anniversary of the looting and storming of Kumasi by British forces. And I've joined with the British Museum to lend objects from the collection to commemorate that and think about a cultural partnership in the future, lending these objects looted 150 years ago and building up knowledge and exchange, skills around curating, conserving, and reflecting on that
What is it, for example, that you're loaning?
We're loaning incredible works of gold jewellery that come from the court of the Asante, soul washers, badges, and incredible gold pipes. And this material is bringing such joy, also reflection on the way in which it was taken out of the Asante kingdom. But incredible admiration for the skill and craftsmanship of the Asante people.
I mean, there is a sort of obvious question, because you've used the word looting. We nicked this stuff. Why are you just lending it back? Why is it not just being repatriated and said, look, here are your stolen goods. We've had a good period with them, but they are yours.
Because the V&A, like the British Museum, is governed by legislation which prevents what's called the de-accessioning, the restituting or repatriating of items that were looted or stolen in the past. Anything that officially enters the collection is there in perpetuity. Now, there's a question whether that legislation is still fit for purpose, but rightly we operate under the rule of law. And so what we can do within the terms of our legislation at the moment is build up what I call renewable cultural partnerships. So long-term loans around these objects that doesn't just begin and end with a transaction around them, but also helps around curatorial skills, conservation, security, and a partnership between, for example, the Manchester Palace Museum, ourselves, and the British Museum.
What do the Ghanaians think? Are they saying, look, this is ours, and we're actually never going to give it back to you now you've loaned it to us? Or are they saying, we understand your complex legislation and the constraints under which you're operating, and we are very comfortable to call it a loan?
Well, in an incredibly gracious speech by the Assembly, he kind of reflected on all of that, and the complexity of that, and said all we can do at the moment is accept this loan and the kind of pride and joy it brings, whilst not in any way sort of accepting the original terms in which these were taken away. So it's really his leadership which has allowed this kind of breakthrough of these objects coming back to Ghana. And so it's mixed feelings. I think you're absolutely right. On the one hand, great to have them here in Kumasi, in the Palace Museum, on show to the Ghanaian people and the Asante Kingdom. But on the other hand, reflection that this might not be the perfect legal outcome from their point of view.
How much of the DNA would you use the word looted around? How much of the collection was taken in illegitimate ways, was stolen?
Well, you say illegitimate, and when we think about it today, it was illegitimate, but at the time, it was regarded as legitimate, and this is difficult for people to sort of get their heads around now, that the laws of war were such that soldiers, and this wasn't just British soldiers, you go right back to history, looting and spoil being part of the process of warfare, and there were actually terms in which it was understood, and sometimes these bizarre accounts would say that there was no robbery, there was just looting, i.e. it was kind of organised and coherent, and then it was sold off as a bonus system to the soldiery. So there are specific collections in the V&A which are kind of organised military looting, and then there are some other items in the collection which were taken by soldiers or traders. Again, we're very transparent and looking into more now. So it's not a huge amount, but they are important.
Can I ask your personal view? Would you like the legislation changed so that we could do what the LA Museum did and just give some of the stuff back?
My view is that the legislation, which was passed in 1983 for the V&A, 1963 for the British Museum, needs updating, and it should be up to trustees of national museums to make the case for objects being in their collections or not. And there are some things I would absolutely justify retaining within the Victoria and Albert Museum, and there are some things you might want to return. But we operate within the law, but maybe things should and can change.
Tristram Humbert, Director of the V&A, speaking to us from Kumasi in Ghana. Georgia, the country, not the US state, is in uproar, and developments have been occurring this afternoon. It's currently a candidate to join the EU. Polls indicate most people really want to be in, but there have been protests from the pro-EU side against a bill that has been going through Parliament there called the Foreign Agents Bill. Protesters see this as being inspired by Russia, and the EU says it might make it difficult to join. Now, in the last few minutes, the Parliament in Georgia has just approved the second reading of this Foreign Agents Bill. We have the BBC Russian Services Georgia correspondent, Nina Akhmeteli, joining us. Could we just start with what the bill is, because this has just got through its second reading, Nina.
Yeah, hi. So we call it, many critics in Georgia call it Russian law.
And actually, the main logo of these protests are no to the Russian law. It's because so-called foreign agent bill. It is many see the parallels with Russia and Russian legislation that was passed in 2012. The government says that the bill is about transparency, but to summarize the main, to summarize this bill, if it is adopted, NGOs and independent media that receive more than 20% of their funding from foreign donors would have to register as organizations, and they actually changed the name, so they had to register as organizations bearing the interest of a foreign power. So, and NGOs as well as journalists, independent media say that for them it's unacceptable, and it is this bill's aim is to marginalize them and to silence them, and they already over 200 NGOs and media organizations said that if this law is passed, they will not register under this name. So they think that if it is passed, the scenario will be like we saw in Russia.
It's a real flashpoint. This law very, very obviously been a terrible flashpoint. There have been protests, quite a few protests, and they've been quite large. How pro-Russian is the Georgian government? I mean, are they really in Russia's pocket, or are they really wanting to get in?
So they, if you listen to their speeches, if you listen to, and actually in Constitution as well, they included in the Constitution, they say that they see the future of Georgia in Europe, in EU. But what we see by their actions is that, and this legislation is, some people say that it's already already clearly shows where the way Georgian government is heading to. So it's clearly not in the European way, because not only opposition MPs, not only NGOs and media, but Western Georgia's Western part say that it's
Hiya,
not
triple phone, please.
European way.
Yeah, Apple Pay.
And just to remind you that we decentralized Georgia.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Nina, thanks for that. Nina Akmanseli there, just as the Georgia Parliament was the second, the party second of that
On BBC Radio 4,
DNA has revolutionized crime investigation. Anna Seabury on 40 years of DNA evidence.
we're talking to people who've been involved in the development of DNA, we think, oh, such a good link, must be going to, including some of the problems that it's thrown up as it's developed.
Eric Adams said police had intervened to restore public safety. He said outside groups had infiltrated Columbia University to radicalize students there. Protests about the war have spread across American universities. Violent clashes at UCLA in Los Angeles, where pro-Palestinian demonstrators were attacked by counter-protesters
boy who was killed by a man with a sword in Northeast London yesterday and has been named as Daniel Andronic. The school described him as a positive and gentle boy and said his death was heartbreaking. The 36-year-old man was arrested at the scene on suspicion of murder. Two other people were hurt, as well as two police officers. The Commissioner, Samart Roby, said they had been badly injured and had survived. Said the wounds suffered by one female officer were really horrific. A 17-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after three people were attacked at a school in Sheffield. Two adults who burned at Trinity College suffered minor injuries, but did not need hospital treatment. The child was unhurt. South Yorkshire Police say they believe they were attacked with both a glass. The Home Office says it has begun detaining people in the European earmark for deportation to Rwanda on strike abroad. The statement said operations have taken place across the country to deploy a foreign no number for survival. Amnesty International said the Rwanda policy is shameful and that everything is going to be about
that aside, let's talk about the substance of where we are on this. Because last year the government was able to say we're making progress, we're 30% down on both arrivals. So far this year, it's gone back up again. Now it is not part of the year, so a lot of happening now. What do you think is going on? Do you think people are accelerating their arrival, hoping to come in before Rwanda really takes off, or are you thinking the numbers are just back up again?
I think it's probably a mixture of both of those things. If you're desperately seeking to come to the United Kingdom and you've heard about the Rwanda scheme, then you will understand that the capacity isn't there in comparison to the amount of people that are coming over. So you're going to take your chances. It's difficult to say whether any reduction in numbers last year was due to some of the very poor weather that we had. Now, I live in Kent, so I know what the conditions have been like down in Dover, and they were falling for quite a lot at the end of last year. So I think that would account for some of it.
So it's not going to have the deterrent effect unless there is a plane full of people going off on a regular basis as the Prime Minister wishes. So I think people are going to still come over, they are still going to try and enter the United Kingdom, and as we've seen, there is now the real possibility that they are going to end up spread across the country and even next week over in
England, as far north possibly as the South Midlands, certainly the Greater London area, in line for some very heavy showers, and later on in the morning, probably by around about rush hour, some of the storms may reach Wales too. But all the while, around about the Peak District, northwards tomorrow, I think brighter weather, the best of the sunshine tomorrow across much of Scotland and almost here as well, 20 Celsius for most Gloucestershire.
Thanks for that, Thomas. Now,
Edinburgh, the South, Jones, PM at BBC Rugby.
BBC News at 6 o'clock. This is Charles Carroll. Good evening. There's been a dramatic upsurge in violence in protests at US universities about the conflict in Gaza. There's concern that outside forces are trying to infiltrate the demonstrations.
Young people are being influenced by those who are professionals at radicalizing our children, and I'm not going to allow that to happen as the mayor of the city of New York.
A boy killed in a sword attack in northeast London yesterday has been named as 14-year-old Daniel Anjoni. Annabeth Hurt, a police officer, suffered serious wounds to her arm.
The surge of events and many hours that took place keeping her arm back together. And it is really horrific series of injuries.
3 people have been attacked at a school in Sheffield. A 17-year-old boy is under arrest. The Home Office has started to detain people who will be sent to the lockdown. Also tonight, in University News, the latest in Moscow. I'm part of my country.
but I have to acknowledge the manner which everything caused chaos, and that's what we
Officials said reflects on decisions which brought about his resignation as Scotland's First Minister. There have been more violent scenes at demonstrations about the conflict in Gaza at universities in the United States. Police have been called to a number of campuses, including UCLA and Los Angeles, where there were clashes after counter-protesters began dismantling barricades around a large pro-Palestinian camp. In New York, scores of students were arrested when police officers raided Columbia University to disperse pro-Palestinian demonstrations. This report, with America editor Sarah Smith from outside the campus.
Overnight, NYPD officers in riot gear climbed through the windows of Columbia University's Hamilton Hall to arrest protesters who occupied the building. Demonstrators have now been completely cleared from the campus where the nationwide wave of protest began. The mayor of New York, Eric Adams, said outside agitators have infiltrated the school's protest.
Young people are being influenced by those who are professionals at radicalizing our children, and I'm not going to allow that to happen as the mayor of the city of New York.
On the other side of the country, classes have been cancelled at the University of California, Los Angeles, where violent clashes broke out when a tented encampment built by pro-Palestinian protesters was attacked by counter-protesters. They tried to shoot down barricades and shoot fireworks into the camp. Anna Deruy is a reporter with the UCLA student paper.
We've been told that there was one protester in the encampment who has been taken to the hospital for head injuries. There has been various aerosols being sprayed around, pepper spray, bear spray, tear gas, and I know that there have been multiple injuries inside the encampment. This is a new level of violence for the encampment so far.
The protests have created a dilemma for university authorities who recognise their students' right to protest, but face complaints of anti-Semitism from Jewish students and feel the need to regain control of their campuses. The University of Wisconsin-Madison was the latest to call in the police today. President Biden has so far said little about the protest, which could be a major political problem for him. He risks losing the votes of thousands of young activists who say it's not critical enough of Israel's conduct of the war in Gaza, while moderate swing voters want to hear him condemn the widespread destruction. This
dramatic protest movement could become a significant issue in this year's presidential election.
A fresh wave of demonstrations about Gaza is also making way at universities across the UK. Vice Chancellors have been keeping a close eye on events, but they're stressing that the protests here are not on the same scale as those in the United States. Our community affairs correspondent, Ashita Nagesh, reports.
For 2 weeks, scenes from universities in the US have shocked the world. Now, pro-Palestine protests are picking up steam on some UK campuses. Today, student activists in Leeds, Newcastle and Bristol set up camps outside their university buildings. And another occupation by staff and students at Warwick has been ongoing in the town's piazza for a week. The students want their universities to cut all financial ties with Israeli colleges and companies. Louis, who's protesting in Newcastle, told me they've reached the end of their patience.
We're done with trying to get motion through the union. We've tried to be democratic since October the 10th. October the 10th is when activism on campus began, and since then we've had no luck. So now we've resorted to an indefinite encampment until the university will enter negotiations with us.
Protests about Gaza at UK universities aren't new. Back in March, students at Leeds occupied one of the campus's buildings for more than 2 weeks. But the demonstrations in this country are still much smaller than those seen in the US, with numbers in the dozens rather than the hundreds or thousands. David Maguire, the Vice-Chancellor at the University of East Anglia, said they had been peaceful so far.
Fortunately to date, the level of violence and unrest has been less in the UK. The events in Gaza and Israel have been playing out on a number of university campuses, but mainly peaceful protests on site and some organised marches in the major cities, so nothing on the same scale.
Universities have told me they respect the right to free speech within the law, and they're prioritising student safety.
The 14-year-old boy who was killed in a sword attack in North East London yesterday has been named as Daniel Anjorin. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Mark Rowley, has praised the officers intervening in the attack in Hainault, describing their extraordinary bravery. Taser protects the man who was away. The boy who died was a pupil of Sandhawk School, where Ben Booth was used.
14-year-old Daniel Anjorin was on his way to school when he was attacked in Hainault just before 7 o'clock yesterday morning. This afternoon it's been confirmed he was a pupil of Bancroft, a Bupane school at Woodford Green in North East London. In a letter to parents, the school's head, Simon Marshall, said special assemblies had been held at the school to help pupils process an event which would
Ministers pledged to move the majority of people into their own homes by March 2024, but figures obtained by BBC Scotland show the numbers in hospital have actually increased. The Scottish Government says it is a complex issue and has provided
Forgot missed your last week. Missed it on, but yeah. No, nothing you have missed. Okay. What did they do last week? What stuff? Random stuff. Are you sure?
It also used his trip to Jerusalem to call on Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, to sustain and accelerate the improved delivery of aid to the territory. Israel Defense Forces have taken journalists to a new border crossing where it's planned to send up to 500 aid lorries a day into Gaza. Our special correspondent, Trevor Keane, was among them. After sustained international pressure led by Israel's strongest ally, America, the government here wants to show it is serious about facilitating an upsurge in aid deliveries to Gaza. A group of international journalists was taken to the Erez border crossing today to witness the loading of trucks taking aid along a new road into northern Gaza. In the distance, through the dust and heat haze, we could see the ruined buildings of Gaza, a place where over 75% of the population is now displaced. The UN has warned of imminent famine, and its human rights director, Volker Turk, said there was a plausible case Israel might be using food as a weapon of war. I put back to the Israeli officer overseeing today's operation, Colonel Moshe Tetro.
What's that? Closed?
In order to facilitate the entrance of humanitarian aid in Gaza,
Wow.
and in particular food.
Road closed. Road closed ahead. Or road ahead closed. What's going on?
UN and aid agencies say that simply isn't true. Among the soaring rates of malnutrition in the Gaza Strip, particularly in the north, where 70% of the population is facing what it calls catastrophic levels of hunger. This soup kitchen in central Gaza is a lifeline for a vulnerable population. Children gathered around cauldrons of beans and rice. They parted to allow an elderly man, then someone, to come to the front, holding out a pot for a ration of rice. This facility is run by World Food Kitchen. 7 of its workers and 2 bridges were killed by Israeli forces last month. Today was the first day since then that its staff were back on the streets of Gaza. National police officer has been charged with terrorist offences relating to phone mass messages on WhatsApp. It's alleged that
哥哥，爸爸好開心。爸爸買咗垃圾桶。Rubbish bin for your room. We can throw rubbish in your bin. Don't tell mommy.
After a public row with the business secretary, Kenny Badenov. Our business correspondent, Emma Simpson, reports.
You would want to take on the job of chairing one of the most troubled businesses in the country, at the centre of the biggest miscarriage of justice in the UK. Step forward,
Ho ho ho.
Well, for the next 12 months, it was. He left school at 16 to work in a signal box for British Rail, rising up the ranks. Qualified as an accountant at night school. After 12 years on the railway, bells in the car industry, he joined the company, working there for 24 years, the last 5 as CEO. The business secretary, Kenny Badenov, said Mr. Railton had been chosen because of his experience transforming organisations to implement the change that was needed at the post office. One former colleague described him as a steady hand on the tiller. That's something the post office could do with right now, given the bruising events of the last few months.
One of the UK's largest mortgage lenders nationwide says house prices have fallen for the second month in a row.
Yeah.
Figures from the Building Society reveal a drop of 0.4% in April compared with March. Economists have predicted that prices would rise in April, but increased mortgage rates in recent weeks have also put further pressure on potential buyers. In the city, the 100 share index ended the day down 23 points at 8,121. Wall Street a short time ago, the Dow Jones was up 111 points at 37,927. On the currency markets, the pound is trading at $1.28. Euro sterling is at €1.17.
La 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 la
Conservatives were riding high after the COVID vaccine rollout, but now it's Labour who's to translate their opinion poll lead to real votes. 107 councils have elections, they're mostly in larger towns and cities in the north of England and the Midlands, although they also cover much of the commuter belt around London. In the capital there are elections for the Mayor and Assembly, and there are also 10 other mayoral elections in England, those to fill in what are called combined authority areas, including the West Midlands and Greater Manchester. If you live in the East Midlands, the North East, or York and North Yorkshire areas, you'll get to elect a mayor for the first time. Changing the law means voters now have to show
against the BBC. A tribunal in London has begun hearing their allegations against the corporation's restructuring of the 24-hour news channels last year. The BBC says the process was fair and objective. Our media correspondent, David Silico, reports.
in London were Martin Cross, Cohen, Yanun, Kashi Madeira, and Anita Mizzo, all say they've been taken aback after they've been told they were not being presented in the new design of BBC. Not a happy name of alternative roles that were viewed by the presenters as international. He said, so produced said that it's the four women playing the process of exam and told the news he also said it was as well as deal with a number of others. As a result, therefore, he was saying to the court in the interview, what presenters also made a series of speaking to the tribunal, Martin Cross said the process of digging the leads were repaired, quite in response to the
你聽日嗰個 presentation 係點樣㗎？嚇咩？係點樣㗎？做咩㗎 ？You have the file? Where is it? In school. Huh?
Let's never watch the video.
A new exhibition has opened in Moscow featuring Western tanks and military hardware captured by Russian forces in Ukraine. The display, which includes army vehicles from 12 different countries, coincides with Russia's Victory Day celebration, commemorates the end of the Second World War. Our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, has more information. When Russian soldiers entered Lydia Lonikovska's village of Otelechina, she and her family decided it was time to go. The area is slowly being turned into a hellscape. The 98-year-old also lived through the Second World War, but thinks this invasion is worse. The closer the Russians got, the more intense the artillery fire became, to the point that Lydia became separated from her relatives. So, she started walking less.
Started walking less. Started walking less. Started walking less. Started walking less. Started walking less.
Lydia was then picked up by
Started walking less.
and taken to a shelter to rest. Still in the
Walking less. Walking less. Walking less.
Reunited with her granddaughter Svetlana, who described both her shock
Walking,
and delight.
walking less. Walking less.
I won't repeat this.
I won't repeat this. I won't repeat this. I won't repeat this. I won't repeat this. I won't repeat this. I won't repeat this. I won't repeat this. Repeat this. Will you? Will you? Will you repeat this? Will you? Will you repeat this?
And the Scottish Government has survived a vote of no confidence just 2 days after continued solidarity stepped down as First Minister. BBC News.
Fred Nightingale. It's one of Hollywood's greatest films, starring two of the renowned figures now.
But talking about it can be a bit of a problem.
It's so universal to the grave. And the final tale is just
I'm Ellen Jones,
And I'm not
and we're taking a deep dive into China.
But how do we approach the film like what we know about its director?
Well, then,
Exploring the genesis, production, and controversy of an iconic movie. We shot
Screenshot! Screenshot! Screenshot!
They make a dark horror for antisocial, artistic young people horror people to go off, or just to enjoy the calmness of the Now, another guest enters room 101 to be guest by Steve's worst nightmare. Thanks forever.
Now, forever.
What would they think? My guest is here to persuade you to banish the item from her list to a place where they'll never be seen again. This is room 101.
Sing again. 又係呢架車，點解成日過嚟呢架車？哦，佢住呢度嘅呢架車，唔怪得之成日出現啦。哦。
Poker player and host of Only Connect, Victoria Coy Mitchell. Well, the audience on your side before we even start. Let me ask you first of all, would you describe yourself as someone who's irritating?
I'm never anything else. I don't think it's something about sending me the system to try and do it.
Yes, but it's just
I'm curious as that.
Okay, your first choice is explained by this sound effect. So what does that mean?
That whole thing. Just sensitive.
So tell me about your sensation.
I think it counts for society. Yes. I'm psychologically at any time.
Yes. I can tell that by looking at it.
Look at him. Look at him. Look at him. Him. Look at 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 him.
Yes, and you're right, in part of another area is affected by tax payments. Some parts of London it's now impossible to park without a smartphone or use without a car. So,
dangerous to say, let's set the stage for everything I do. And something like is a ticket to freedom.
yes.
Better than a passport. You can take it as that. I don't think it's a lot of that.
No. Any that you wish to share with us?
I think no.
to work to do something really stupid without anyone knowing.
Yes.
And the
即係哥哥有人玩啊，要唔要同佢哋玩？
BBC Three is for.
That's an incredibly
啱咪
clever
同佢
joke.
翻嚟。